I
So we
think
have
that
a question from
again,
a viewer about K-12 education. I keep calling it K-12 education. It's now pre-K to 12 education, and maybe it's even more than that now. Wants to know what the status of this is. The governor, of course, has made some announcements about what his preferred plans would look like. And our viewer, and I think we should have this broader discussion on that topic. But as part of that broader discussion, our viewer is also concerned about whether or not there'll be any expansion or continued support for school choice kinds of programs. Senator Putnam, let's start with you. Education issues, K-12, et cetera, and maybe a word or two about school choice.
sure. No, we are suffering from years of underfunding education in ways that are really discouraging. My daughter, when she was a freshman in high school, had 40 kids in her English class. That's too many kids for a classroom. That's not just a burden for the teacher, that's a burden for the kids who are in the school. And we talk a lot about the special education cross subsidy and the ELL cross subsidy. We have unfunded mandates that are crippling our schools. So clearly, we need more resources in the schools, but I'm going to diverge from some of my colleagues in my caucus. I don't think we just need to write a bigger check. We need to write smaller, smarter checks towards specific elements of education that we know are impactful, like pre-K. We know that early childhood education is a great investment. I don't think necessarily we need to write a big check for $1 billion to all the schools, but I do think we need to invest really heavily in something like preschool. In St. Cloud right now, this past year, there were 200 kids on the waiting list for preschool because we didn't have space for them in our schools. And in my community, there are hundreds of kids who don't even know that preschool was an option. So we know that there are specific strategic places where we can invest that I think will do a lot more good. And again, I'm in some ways kind of bucking my party on this one, but I think that it's not necessarily just the amount of money, it's where we put it that's important. Now, on the, I think, inaccurately termed school choice issue, um, the research on this is pretty clear that school vouchers do not have anything to do with choice because over 95% of the people who get them are already in the schools that they're going to. I'm referring specifically to Indiana and Tennessee. Both of those states adopted an education savings account similar to the ones that went through the Senate this last session. And they were radical failures. They have nothing to do with choice. It's just about taking money out of the public schools. Barry, we were talking about history a little bit earlier. The supposed school choice movement comes from Virginia in the late 1950s and early 60s. And it's because people wanted to take their kids out of the public schools because they'd become integrated. That's where this comes from. And in terms of its actual practical consequences in both Indiana and Tennessee, the achievement gap was increased after school choice was adopted. It's fundamentally just a very bad policy. That's my take on it.
Senator Rasmusson?
Well, Justice Anderson, just to respond a little bit to Senator Putnam's comments, I think it's very unfair to try to attempt to tie school choice advocates here in Minnesota back to racial segregation. When I talk to education advocates, regardless of what they think about school choice, they care about students and they want to make sure that Minnesota students have success. And unfortunately, our education system in Minnesota is not producing the results that Minnesotans expect. Our racial disparities in educational outcomes haven't been improving. We've seen the impact that the last few years have had on student proficiency. And I hope that there's bipartisan recognition that the numbers that we're seeing from test scores and the stories, more importantly, that we're hearing from parents and students shows that there's a lot of opportunity to improve in our educational system. That, of course, includes supporting our local public schools. In my area, the public schools are oftentimes the heart of the local communities. The most popular event is the local sporting event that the high school has, and the biggest art event is usually the high school band or choir concert. And so having strong local public schools is really important, but I do think we have to look at the outcomes that we're seeing and trying to see what tools can we bring to ensure that every Minnesota child, regardless of zip code, has a chance for a transformational education. And I was really lucky. I'm a public school kid from Fergus Falls. I got a transformational education that allowed me to pursue a lot of opportunities that I never thought I'd be able to pursue. And I have that same ambition for every Minnesota student out there.